So that's what you're being. Okay, thank you.
All right, so hey guys, hey, I'm just trying to get a see how I am appearing live, and then I got to get a couple things sorted here, and so anyway, I'm on StreamYard. It's going to be another one of those days. So my niece, I send my niece vocabulary words every day. Today was the word usurp. Always curious how that's going. Anyway, I bring her up because I can't possibly imagine what it would be like to be Hythloday's son at this particular moment in time. Perhaps I'm not live. Doesn't appear as if I'm showing up on the screen. So I don't even know whether or not this is going. Let's see. If anyone sees this and would like to type that in, whether or not they can see me, that would be great. StreamYard is sometimes a pain in the ass. Okay. Well, it doesn't appear. Let me recycle that. See what's going on in that department. Perhaps it is going, and I just don't know. Anyway, and maybe this is best as an audio, right? Maybe you guys could just listen to me for a while, and I don't really need to concern myself about the video. Okay, we're just reloading the page. See what is there, what's going on. My camera light is on. Okay, we'll give this one more try. It might be a dead stream, which would be a real pity. Well, okay. Waiting for YouTube. Let's see if YouTube actually puts me on here. Anyway, I can't imagine this to be too exciting for you all. I'm just waiting. It's a technical issue. Maybe I'll end up having to start this again. No, looks like I am there. Okay. So, guys, this is what's, yesterday I found out about Hythloday, and I guess he offed himself a week or so ago, and that just sucks. I didn't know there was any precursors to what was going on with the dude. Apparently somebody said, that he had given some sort of indication that if he was gonna do himself in, that he was gonna that he was going to do himself in eventually, that was his preferred mode of dying, I suppose. Anyway, but it struck me. It struck me kind of hard. Like I kind of got hit, right? Because it is weird, the landscape of people that I know out there, this kind of general ambient care that I have. Like in my mind, there's this huge, like, kind of a, self-care, family care, not necessarily in this order. I can preference my family, and sometimes other people over myself. I'm just setting up this here camera. Anyway, to do Okay, come on. Is speed painting, and I've never done this before. I just finally figured out how the cameras are capable of doing speed painting. So that one's going. See, check it out. Little phone right there. Got the coffee there. Coming back over here. Oh, and as per usual, I'm topic skipping. Down here, check that out. Down here, let's see if we can get that little mirror thing to go on in infinity. You guys could talk about Hythloday jumping into infinity. There we go. I'm going to hit the record button on that. That one's recording out of that little cam. Whoop. And this is the piece that I'm working on right here. And anyway, so I thought, while I'm painting, I might as well ramble a little bit and see if anyone wants to ramble about it. But my concern about Hythloday killing himself really came down to the effect that it's going to have on his kid. Right. To be honest, I don't know how old this kid is. I thought maybe at some point within the last few years I saw him, and I just had this indication that he was like 9 many years ago. So he might be in his late teens now. I don't know. Right. But that seems to be the staple that I think that should be kind of like the reason why, if anyone has offspring, they shouldn't off themselves, right? But like, there's plenty of people that also don't have offspring that if they off themselves, it would definitely have, some rippled impact. And, looks like somebody is on board here. Barklord. Barklord's on deck. Okay, Barklord, I'll bring you in. We can chat here in a sec. Let's see if it pops him. There you are.
Hey, man.
How you doing?
Good. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
All right.
Yeah. And Barklord here and I, we went back and forth a little bit yesterday on talking about Hythloday doing this, and it was it's interesting to get people's feedback. A lot of us are, I guess, still in the dark as far as the method, but the method isn't really all that interesting to me, but it is kind of just fills in the puzzle pieces a little bit. But how are you doing today? What time you got your late night over there?
It's about 6 p.m.
Oh, about 6 p.m. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't know if the method of Hythloday's exit was really all that important, but he did mention on his video that he was denied a prescription for medication, pain medication. I don't know if that was because he had a history of those kind of tendencies, so I don't know. But I'm a little disappointed with my own video because I waited about 10 days or so to even make one, but I come across as really flippant, but I think it's my own kind of defense about really confronting suicide and murder in my own family. And it's just, it's an impossible thing to judge, and everybody has different feelings in relationship to it. I'm sorry for his family. I really am. It's really hard.
That's where I'm at. I feel sorry for his family. But then you brought up, you mentioned openly your brother-in-law and your sister. And are you okay if I just ramble into that topic?
Yeah, that's fine.
So, Barklord's brother-in-law snapped and killed his sister and committed suicide. And did they have kids? They did have kids that they left behind.
Yes, one is an adult and one is not.
Yeah. And so you had, and I thought that you were stoic about that situation because it seemed as if you liked your brother-in-law so much that you were kind of giving him, like positive benefit of the doubt, and it didn't seem as if there was a personal anger that you were harboring towards him. More like just accepting the situation as it is. But I couldn't relate to that. And then you kind of, I guess made it an enigma to me. And because it's an enigma to yourself, I guess.
Yeah, I can't comprehend it. My last communication with him was very positive, and I had been thanking him for some help that he had given me years previously, and he was so supportive and generous to me that he didn't even want any thanks. And then just a few months later, that is, he melted down, and I only have good memories of him, so it's impossible for me to
I see.
understand what set him off, and it's not. I'm not saying that there could be something that would justify what he did. I'm just saying that I can't comprehend it, and every once in a while the waves of anger and sadness come, but I can't really keep on with a general attitude of anger and hate toward him.
Yeah.
It's odd. Yeah.
It was like he was so positive in your life, so positive character that and so did you feel like you summed it up as something hit him that just wasn't like him, and this happens to be the collateral effect of it? And so is that kind of the means in which you're able to, I really want to forgive him, but not even put him in a place of responsibility in your mind or something like that?
Well, I think he's definitely responsible for what he did, but at the same time, he did struggle with anxiety and depression, and he had taken himself off of his medication, and I'm not sure what the process was, how long of a time span it had since he had taken himself off the medication. But in addition to that, they had also moved from Wisconsin to Florida, and he had difficulties in getting work down there, and so there were a lot of stress factors, and obviously he wasn't thinking clearly. He probably had started drinking heavily, and so all of the things together amounted to suicide and murder. And I have no idea why, and maybe never will.
Right. Well, well, yeah, it sounds like it's hard to get answers to. And then, so then that being said, you being in that position, you hear about Hythloday doing himself in, and so that it gives you a parallel experience to some extent, meaning here's another person that in some regard that's committed suicide.
It did seem in Hythloday's situation, from an outside perspective, obviously, it seemed like he had taken on too many battles. And in addition to his personal physical pain that he was going through, maybe he just wasn't able to take a step back and make a different choice. Maybe the immediacy of the possibility that the police were coming to his house to enforce a warrant about his utilities it was just another thing in addition to all of his other stress factors. And, it did appear like in the comments section of that video that people were reaching out to him because they knew that he was not in a good place to make a decision. And, even I think Skid Row Radio and a couple of other people were immediately concerned, and I didn't even see the video until the following day. So.
Yeah. Well, yeah. My feeling. I mean, not to transition the conversation in kind of a more of a description or a type of eulogy for Hythloday. Hythloday is Justin. It's Hythloday71 I put out there. I think that was his numbers also, if I got it right. But he changed his channel name to something to do with Assange, and he did seem as if he was getting political there. But I had lost track of him. I think I've had a couple hangouts with him. I've had some direct live interaction with him in the past to get an idea of where he was coming from, but I can't honestly remember what the topics were that were being discussed way back in the time that I had that interaction. But he did seem like a like.
He was very intelligent and he was very honest. He would tell you exactly what he thought, and he did have a sense of humor too.
I mean, yeah, he did have a sense of humor, which was cool, and yeah, just that piercing mathematical. Like to me, he seemed to maybe like his knowledges were eclipsing him. Like it was of the greatest concern to almost take on this kind of posture, like the like a thinker's posture that's in the moment, trying to formulate his words or his terms. And
a day or so later, I was thinking of, have you ever seen that movie, The Big Chill, from the early 80s? Early to mid 80s, I think it was The Big Chill.
The Big, oh yeah. Or yeah, where the family or people are getting together in the kitchen in the house. The Big Chill, yeah.
Yeah, the situation was that they were attending, they were there and getting together. They were like all college, mostly they were college friends from decades previous, and their friend had committed suicide, and he was a physics student, and I don't know if he was a PhD now or what the situation was, but he decided to end it under those circumstances of having, comprehended quantum mechanics or something like that. And they were all dealing with the aftermath of having lost their friend who they considered to be maybe their smartest among them, and had decided to end it all. And they were kind of just left there thinking, well, what are we supposed to, how are we supposed to interpret it? And then,
well, it was and it's so interesting that the idea, because I think Hythloday brings it up, something like he brings up determinism in that last video. He brings up quantum mechanics, almost as if like something he found also, not like something he found was also a participating factor in his maybe sense of smallness or ineffectualness or something. I can only spitball and speculate as to why, what of quantum mechanics would be so debilitating to his psyche, or something that could have driven him, beyond just the context of painkillers. Or like I'm doped on painkillers every day, something or another. Like I couldn't even do this right now to this extent if I wasn't on painkillers. So the debilitation of pain is humongous, And even before I took the painkillers, I was trying to get back into a good masochistic mindset, like just muscle through it, you know, like I'm in a war and I've been shot and I'm carrying some other almost dead body around with me, trying to save them. And you kind of get in that mindset, like, well, sometimes under certain circumstances, even if you are in this huge pain, you push by it. But if you take a Hythloday, I don't know. I mean, he had the broken arm cast, and I don't know. I mean, I apparently that had nothing to do with his overarching chronic pains. I'm not too.
No, didn't you see? Did you see his video explaining that?
I didn't. I didn't see that.
Okay. He was attacked by a neighbor's dog, and it was not a broken arm; it was a bandage of some kind, and it was a pretty nasty wound, I guess. But he was trying to. I think he was trying to explain the fact that the police wouldn't even follow up on his claim that this neighbor's dog had chewed his arm up pretty bad.
Oh,
So he
yeah.
was dealing with a lot of different angles. He was dealing with that. His mother had been given a ticket for littering because she threw a cigarette in the street. You know, the utility bill issue, the Assange rejection of his case, and the pain of his body, and I think everything together with his ongoing, I don't know if you call it anxiety or depression about just his existential crisis, it just all came at the same time, and he wasn't able to make a different decision.
Yeah, and that's the thing.
The police earlier in the day, he had told the utility man that if he's going to follow through with the warrant to come into the premises and do whatever he needs to do, he has to go get the police in order to do that. So
Yeah.
I think the police were coming, and he suspected the police were coming. And I don't even think that it necessarily would have been a terrible. I mean, I don't know, but it just seemed like
do you think he that's taken as him setting the stage to have the police find his body or something? Is that what you're saying, or
I don't know. I don't know how to interpret it really. It just seemed like watching his last two videos on the same day, the progression of it was that too many things were happening at the same time.
Yeah.
And he wasn't able to deal with it.
Yeah.
Which really makes me think that it's a good idea to not push people's buttons who
well, that's one
in a way on YouTube or on the internet in general, because you just don't know, you know, to have some kind of compassion, or at least if you're pushing their buttons, you know their circumstances better. Yeah, I mean, you know what their sense of humor is. It's not a good idea to play with people's emotions in a volatile way like that.
well, that's your general temperament. Like I was watching Gary's video. I didn't quite get through the whole thing about it, but he did mention, you know, the his effect, and meaning that you can't quite know your effect on other people, meaning you might be pushing buttons without even directing the person.
Sure. Yeah.
And so the warning to, you know, the take heeding, to be frank, I was talking to the guy last night. I talked to him. He's not much of a YouTuber, but he's an Instagram guy, internet guy. And I put him in the friend category, and he I toss trash at him sometimes, kind of abruptly, almost like I was saying, like, oh, I'm taking on a parental role, but I kind of like pluck at some of the soft spots on him, not not to necessarily, like, my intent is not to aggravate the soft spot, but the aggravation, like, I know
Like a
that
self-awareness, like you're trying to draw his awareness to some vulnerability.
yeah, but but I do. I mean, meaning the warning that you give not to push buttons. I have to always throw in a caveat there, because I assume that to some extent button pushing, if the person that's receiving it is capable of reinterpreting why it is that their buttons are being pushed, why it is, instead of just thinking like, oh, the world's so mean to me and this is just another example of the meanness, right? To hope that they're able to interpret why it is that the world at that moment, in that person's voice or whatnot, is being mean to them, and to almost take it as an informative position relative to their media environment or their social environment, or and that's kind of where
I
that's kind of
remember that's really the context in which I came to know you on YouTube, as you were in that mode of attack, attack, attack. You know,
right.
you were attacking people intellectually or philosophically, but it was much more playful. I remember, and
Yeah, I mean, well,
it
and then
was almost like a badge of honor that you would go and attack people. You know, like sort of.
right. Well, yeah, and that was the thing, and so, but then, I mean, it did get more serious at some time. Even my attacks, I think, could have like a lasting negative impact on the people who I was going after. But at the same time, I think things got more seriously the more I got educated, you know, in a field where I was actually then taking on roles of argumentation and being attacking. But and then, yeah, at some point the like the gloves came off and I got more ruthless, and but then I pulled myself back at that point, realizing that I'm not all powerful in terms of how it is I'm doing that, or why it is I'm doing that. And but
Do you
your
think?
temperament has always been low level. I mean, with the very rare exception,
Mhm.
I see you peek up and go after somebody in some blatant
Do you think
mode of
the entire conversation around antinatalism or apholism really changed people with respect to the topic of suicide, and um, because it seemed like there were a lot of vulnerable people at that time. I won't mention any names, but there were a couple of young people that were. One was a young transgender man, and he or she was very uh, borderline suicidal, and I think that a lot of people were.
you talking about heroin church?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't
sorry to
know
say
what
it.
her name was, but I don't know whatever
Yeah,
that person, but it seemed like uh, heroin church was one among a few people that seemed like you really needed to be stern and sensitive at the same time,
yeah,
and really listen to what they, even if they were, even because sometimes um, I remember heroin church just called me all kinds of just really fucked up names, and I just thought, I'm like 20 years older than you. It's not really hurting my feelings, but
right. And that's what I'd explained to
I
them.
don't feel at liberty to do the same back to you, because I'm afraid that you might do something rash, and
Yeah, well, and you being a parent, you have sensibilities that would be, like, I'm not a parent, so I don't have to necessarily put up the moral social standards that you're trying to bring into your child's form of behavior and then live them, like, and so you're not guilty of saying, do what I say, not what I do. You employ the standard, you know, because it's the general base idea of how to be polite and get along, and you know, make certain. Okay, kid, the guy just gave you candy. What do you do? What do you do? What do you say? What do you say? Come on, say it. Say it. You know, you're gonna say it. Say it. Yeah, that's right. Thank you. All right. You know, and then you go on that whole thingamajiggy about appropriate behavior to the public, to the world. But and then my you know, I kind of blew out the other end, like, oh, I don't work in a business, I'm not raising kids. I have, you know, when I'm out in public, I'll talk shit, make up shit, say shit. But then I don't think like, oh, that's really amazing, like that's a great personality feature of me, unless I keep it always, you know, as comical as I possibly can. Um, Something like that. Like there's an excuse to do something brash when it's comedic. But but it's not about me. But if you thought, like, if you think of Hythloday's sense of humor, his seemed like he had an intellectual sense of humor. Like his jokes were about something.
That's why I wish I had asked him about his reading on Thomas More's Utopia and why he chose Hythloday as a name, as a handle on YouTube, because sometimes I got the feeling that he was very like well, I guess I don't really know what his politics were other than his views on Assange. And I respect that. I think that even though I don't like the way Assange kind of stepped in and meddled with the 2016 elections, I do respect his approach to outing sensitive information worldwide. I think I like that, but
well, I mean, just to make quickly politically, my personal opinion about meddling in media, meddling in psychological perception is not, to me, that's not like, to me, that's not even a felony problem. Meaning, I think, kind of like, oh, well, it's okay if all of our citizens discuss all these variant positions and they make memes of other people's perception, but God forbid an alien, you know, foreign country steps in and meddles with perceptions. And my thought on that is that's bullshit. Like if we're opening up to the world has media. They're gonna, you know, I mean, I don't know.
They have a vested interest. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's, you know, it's fair game. So, meaning if they were toying with the voting machines, like actually changing votes, then I'd have a huge problem. But for me, ideas are still like to me, all the Russians were doing were exercising freedom of speech. And
yeah.
The Google CEO in front of Congress, they said, how much, you know, have the Russians bought ads through Google? And he said, yes. He said, $4,500 worth. And they said, oh, 4,500, yes. And it was such this small amount that the Google CEO said that the Russians purchased that it seemed as if any billionaire domestically could have, just one of their ads would have had more influence than the whole Russian effect on Google. And so then the conversation moved to Facebook.
Yeah. Right? My whole thing about the Assange thing, though, was that
yeah, go ahead.
He's he's outing the truth, or he had a hand in unveiling all these emails, but that's a different thing. Like revealing a truth is different than like all of the trolling that happened on Facebook with just bizarre memes that would take you 20 minutes just to unpack the untruth contained in it, and that my relatives passed back and forth and commented on and liked. And I think that they're so bizarrely false that if that was propagated by Russia, I'm extremely angry, because it's put up walls between me and my family that I can't speak to them anymore about politics, especially. So that's a different thing than.
Well,
We're kind of getting off a different topic.
If you were a type of religion and you converted away from it, and your family got mad and they said, if you do that, we're not going to talk to you anymore. It almost sounds like, that's where the political differences and religious differences. That's why you tell a kid, hey, if you go on a first date, don't talk about religion or politics. You don't want to fuck things up until you have things ironed out beforehand. Anyway, that's that. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, everybody has a different temperament, has a different context, and that I can see how that affecting your family, your family's perception, can make you.
Just for instance, I have an uncle. It's an uncle-in-law actually, who was in the United States Navy for 35 years. He was a master chief on a submarine, and I don't disrespect him for any of that, but he was passing along memes about how Muslims, they don't even have hospitals. And then listed underneath the title of this meme, it was all these bullet points about how they don't have this, they don't have that, blah blah blah. And so in the comments section, I asked him, well, if Muslims don't have hospitals, how is it that the Navy SEAL team rescued Jessica Lynch from a hospital and got like medals of honor or silver stars and stuff for like this great big production on TV, rescuing her from a hospital, and he didn't even bother to respond. And so it was obvious to me that he wasn't interested in engaging in any kind of facts there. He was just interested in throwing shit against the wall. And when he came to my sister and brother-in-law's funeral, when he comes there with his fucking MAGA hat on, I look him in the eye and I can't even speak to him with any kind of like, I don't want to just disrespect him, but he's obviously not going to be in the same factual reality as me. So how can I even talk to him? That's some of the problems that come up because of all the disinformation in social media. And now he's in face saving mode, right? He can't admit that he was wrong, that he spread disinformation and voted for the wrong candidate based on stupidity, because he's a United States military veteran of 35 years, who was a master chief in the fucking United States Navy. He can't admit that a dumbass like me was right and he was wrong. He can't do that.
Well, and I run into on a related note, like it went, because I'm on Discord a lot. When I think Discord and open communication and that, worldwide groups of people getting together, sharing. On there really started this whole notion of kind of like it, people. He's a theist and he'll argue atheists, and the atheist said, well, they'll argue certain things, and then they'll say, well, I don't know anything, right? They're making a general statement of like relativism, like, well, everything's relative. I don't really know this. And then the theist will say, how do you know? How do you know? Do you know your statement? You know, that you don't know anything. Is that statement, you know, true, is what the guy presses on, right? So he'll try to move them to an absolutism where their statement of they don't know, if it's trusted, it's part of the liar's paradox at that point. And to me, kind of like with your uncle, right? Like he says there's no hospitals, but maybe in his mind, you did say uncle, right?
Yeah.
Right. Maybe in his mind, he meant by no hospitals, he wasn't making a universal absolute claim, but more of a statistical, like statistically speaking, there's not a lot of them. Like
Well,
out of them, right?
but
And
I
then
mean, historically, is he willing to admit that much of modern science came out of Islamic philosophy and math, all those things? I mean, it's just the whole insinuation is that he's right and Muslims are all a bunch of terrorists, and you know.
well, and then it is interesting to like I finished the audio Quran. It was like roughly 18 hours of listening, and I only attempted to listen to it when I was focused upon it and I wasn't letting my mind wander. And there is something very, very demanding and very, very unilateral about the theology in the Quran. And this is notwithstanding the hadiths, merely the Quran, right? The hadiths is almost the buttressing text that shows you how to interpret the Quran. And I felt after reading that, like very, very convicted, very influenced by understanding like this is the text that motivates this theology. It motivates the clinging to Allah and the Quran and Muhammad as the case, as the theological writ of the case. And that dogmatic, like to me the same thing occurs when I read the book. There was kind of this like it seemingly could be it's like a well wrapped con, and I
This is why
call it like a choice.
This is exactly what I was trying to tell you when you and I were in Amsterdam, and
Yeah.
I tried to tell you that I think that religious systems ought to be properly thought of as emotional and intellectual yogas rather than scientific truth claims. And I think that, I mean, this isn't a new idea on my part, but I do think that there is a spiritual benefit to practicing them, but and there can be a lot of overlap, significant differences as well. But you know, both Christianity and Islam they've both been heavily influenced by both Plato and Aristotle, and they're not.
Well, I agree with that.
They're not ridiculous. They're not ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm not summing them up as ridiculous. I mean, but the thing about, especially somebody that's going to war in the Middle East, you know, and granted he's maybe older and he wasn't fighting in the Middle Eastern wars. Maybe he was more of the, I don't know which conflicts he was in, but in any case, because of the Judeo-Christian heritage of the U.S., it could kind of shore up an absolute line or a disdain towards that group, meaning as the military are being inculcated, even the Islamists that are going to war on our side against those areas, they're probably treated more about like we need to take care of this as a faction, as a population of power for American interests, not an anti-Muslim thing, but all of the Christians or all the people that are not cued in with Islam might be indoctrinated more so of a we're going to war against this people. So in order to emotionally get you equipped, we have to also get you emotionally ready to believe you're going to kill these other people because their religion is so unforgiving or it's like making them a monster. You need to make your enemy a monster any way you can. And so if that includes a distinction between your, the greater, per capita religious base of your platoon going to war than theirs, then utilize a demonization of their idealism also as a means to help your people destroy them. And so when you mention somebody's in the military and they're MAGA hatty, I approach them differently than like my brother. My brother is on the right. He's mostly pro-Trump, or he likes the anti-left kind of thing. But he has no military history, right? He just holds.
That's not the brother that I met, though, right?
What's that?
That's not the brother that I met.
No, you met the other brother. You met my older brother, not that brother. Yeah, you met my older brother, not the older brother. That's right. That's right. That was an interesting night. Amsterdam was so interesting. I think about going back.
It's too bad we didn't have more time. I was digging it, but I was kind of worried that I wasn't going to find my way back. And then I had that issue with my debit card at the airport. Luckily, that was too big a problem, but I was concerned about it.
Yeah, still that was funky.
So what prompted you to come on here tonight? I've never heard of a particular website before. This is StreamYard.
Yeah, well, because there was some new hoop you had to jump to stream on YouTube, and so it was actually Canada, I think, that turned me on to StreamYard, and I realized that it was a functional protocol to stream, because I guess you can't just stream directly from YouTube anymore. That they put something in that asks you to download some other software, and so this company kind of fulfills that niche. And I was like, okay, I'll jump in there. But back to what the idea of shared information, shared media, like so you get a platform like Discord, and I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's like kind of an unhinged Google Hangouts that's mostly auditory in nature, but you can also drop links and drop words. So it's text and auditory, not so much video, right? So you're dealing with people without dealing with their face. So it's almost the opposite of the idealism of Facebook. It's like going on a blind date where you can talk to the person and you can see what they're saying, but you don't interact with them by watching them, and I think there's something wonderful about that. And so my point, though, is that as I guess you'd say the leftist CNN media trying to go after the idea of Russian collusion and so forth, which is a fine paradigm to take. I think, though, because of my earlier argument, that that media itself, the inculcation of information is something that I don't think is treasonous, even if it's directed outward, because we are open, we're receptive to it. And so, I mean, if I was High Grand Poobah, I would be pressing for the idea that, like global communications is important. In one way, I would want to release perspectives in communications, right? Almost to get Mormon zealots and Islamic zealots, or even, Scientologist zealots, any and every religion, to bring their best to the table and hammer it out religiously. And then not just city planners and state planners, but nation building people to a table. You know, bring Elon Musk. I mean, he's already around the world, right? Talk about digging tunnels underneath. Talk about transportation in the air. When is the culture going to allow itself to move into like the visual pictorials we get of old Star Wars or Krypton or Vulcan planets where, you know, there's different layers and highways of travel and holograms and so forth. Like it seems like we're all on the cusp of this kind of a reality, and yet it seems also as if it's far from us. Meaning, and it's far from us because we aren't willing to take the onslaught of collateral information, right? That's what I'll call it. Like the whole Russian thing is like, we don't want their influence, right? That's why even RT, the Russian TV, like, look, if they're paid for by the Russians, then you'd think, well, they're necessarily going to be anti-American, when really it doesn't seem like they're so much anti-American as much as they're descriptive critically against America. But we want this kind of dividing lines because we do know money influences, we do know information influences, and maybe the world, maybe I'm the blind one, right? Maybe information is key. Not to monologue, but maybe, you know, if you change someone's reading list, you're going to change their mind. If you were, you know, if you were justified, if you had the most intellectual minds trying to convert you to a Trump supporter using all the information that they could, and you weren't able to reset your access to media that said otherwise, at some point in time, it would be like speaking another language, I would think. You know, you're trapped like John McCain in some Vietnam prison camp. After a couple of years, you're going to pick up their language. You're going to know what they're talking about. You might even agree with some of the things that are being said. And so it's, and the yes men, their big joke was, you know, like, oh, you got these people that are thinking this way, we'll just change their reading list. Change the reading list, and you'll change how public policy is performed in the future. But since, if you really think that the internet is cracked open, right, and your genre of thought, your interest in certain texts has to do with the Western canon, right? It seems like you're running through the Western canon text generally, meaning that's your predominant your predominant liking, I guess. I don't know what you'd say upon all my rambling there, but
yeah, well, lately, definitely. That would be true. As a matter of fact, earlier today, I was revisiting Hegel's philosophy of right and foundations for economics and things like that. And it's just fascinating. There's, I found 2 really good videos on YouTube about it too, but I have to go back, and I had to leave so many of my books behind while I sold my last Hegel textbook when I left and came over here. And regretting that now. I only have about 15 books now. So everything I have to read is online. But.
Oh, dude, let me, I'll just grab these. I just picked up these yesterday, which I'm not certain what to do other than, you know, read them. I might gift one of them. But this one Charles Potts, and it's the Yellow Christ, Volga Crusa, and it's got the Ouroboros on the front, and but it says Volume 1, Green Panda Press, right? And it seemed as if it was, I mean, it seemed like it was written perhaps in the 70s, and it seemed kind of beat poetry, kind of wobbly-esque, something to that effect. And then I found this. This one is, I guess I could have brought that first one closer. The Drowning Duck.
Looks from the 50s, early 60s.
Death. Yeah, and I mean, mostly when I saw it, I thought it more because it was a Penguin pocketbook, because it was old and had the red letter, or not red letter, but red, red outline or red page paint. That there it must have something that I could probably use in my literary diet. It's a Perry Mason novel.
Oh, really?
But then again, and then, okay, so then here's number 3, which I was going to get a whole stack, right? Son of
Mad, yeah.
Right, but just the name. If you just saw that outline right there, you might go, "What's Son of Mad? Oh my goodness," But then, and I was going to get these Don Knotts, but I was reading the Don Knotts, and I like his 13 Stories text, but I didn't like this. But just the idea of doing storyboards in comic form,
You could really do. Have you ever thought about doing a graphic novel?
Well, I do think about it, but I don't. I mean, I to be honest, I've come to the conclusion that I've been too far all over the map with what it is I'm doing, and it would be really nice to concretize in graphic novel form my philosophies, or just my story of more of my life, or how I came to be who I am, and yeah. So the answer is yeah. But I feel I was for a short while, when I lived in Venice, California, I was hired by the guy that did the movie Spun. He was writing a script for Mama Black Widow, and he asked me to do the storyboards. But the whole thing got shut down pretty quickly. He wasn't getting picked up, and so I never actually got my paycheck for it. But I did some storyboards for him. But as far as a graphic novel, yeah, I think it'd be great. I don't know how. I mean, I think it would be appealing to some. I mean, people would read it, but as far as where I would take them, their expectations of what they would get in a graphic novel, I'm not certain how I would think about fulfilling other people's expectations. But I don't know. That's the long answer. What about you? Don't you think you want to write a movie, write a screenplay?
I definitely would. I every time I come up with an idea, it always ends up to be a short chapter in my overall novel. So I think really what I'm best at writing is vignettes and very short stories. I haven't mastered a long form. Anything more than 100 pages is way too much for me.
Well, and do you think that the Twitter and the millennial mentality is? Do you think, like, for example, do you feel like your son is more open to long form, or is he more conditioned now to short form?
No, he reads a lot of science fiction and fantasy. He's read, even when he was a younger kid. I mean, he's 22 now, but he read all the Harry Potter, and those are fairly long books, but he's also read all the Star Wars and lots of other fantasy and sci-fi fiction, and more than I ever have. Much more science fiction than I've ever read. So I'm glad he's a reader. I'm glad most of his reading diet, I think, is long, 250 to 400 pages, and that's good on him,
Good. Yeah,
we have different reading tastes and we have different musical tastes, but he definitely doesn't have just a Twitter type of.
Well, I guess I was trying to diagnose, whether or not the major population was moving more towards that or not. Like, hey, look, narrow down what you're saying. Don't complexify it. Don't over. You don't need to keep harping on the same ideas. But then
I found that.
Yeah.
I found that at work. my last job in Mankato, Minnesota, I won't name where I worked, but it's strange because if somebody would bring up a topic and I would follow up or interact with them on whatever, maybe even a political topic, borders on the political. If we're talking about it for more than 2 or 3 minutes, it'll linger with me. And if I mention and kind of continue the conversation for an entire shift over, maybe every half an hour mention something about it, they'll talk to me or they'll think it's weird. Like they can't imagine that I'm still on that same topic.
Well, yeah,
but I'm continuing the theme of the day, and that's the way I like to operate. And it might just be a little thought here or there, but I try to stay on the same thing throughout the day just to have some kind of golden thread, It might not amount to anything, but
no, it's funny that you would do that because that you would make a funny character in an office sort of show, like everyone else is on to some other topic and you're running,
like Woody Harrelson. Yeah. Did you ever watch Cheers?
What in Cheers? Yeah, I just listened to the theme song today to Cheers, and there was a lyric in there that I didn't know that was kind of like the Kinks lyric. Like in the Kinks, it says, "And boys will be girls, and girls will be boys. It's a mixed up world," right? But in the Cheers song, they say something like, like you want to go where everyone knows your name, and but then he says something about your husband wants to be a girl. Your husband wants to be a girl is in the Cheers theme song, that lyric. And I thought,
it's kind of a Kinksy sort of melody.
What's that?
It sort of sounds like a Kinks melody.
Everybody, yeah. Well, I was listening to that and Ray Charles on the Blues Brothers, Shake Your Tail Feather. I was supposed to have this model come over today, and she's a burlesque clown and getting her master's in education, and she's kind of a, locally she's kind of a big deal, and she's been showing in Texas and doing shows in, around here in the West and a little bit in the South. And yeah, she's supposed to be coming over sometime in the afternoon so I can paint her. And so I was sending her I sent her the Blues Brothers, Let Me See You Shake Your Tail Feather. And speaking of Harry Potter, she refers to a lot of people as being muggles. It's like, okay, all these people doing on their merry way, they're the muggles. They're not the ones that are out, really exploring the dynamism of, in your case, you might say wizardry or theocracy.
They're not part of the storyline.
What's that?
They're not part of the main storyline. They're just background.
There's background. Yeah, non-playable characters, I guess is the phrase. But it's almost a critique of those people. And God, I've been tapping on these waves for too long. I'm really trying to. I gotta figure out my light code here. How I'm putting this thing together. But
can you pull your camera so I can see your picture better?
Well,
no.
No, I mean I'll do it just briefly here. It's I don't know if that suffices a little bit.
Oh yeah. Silver Surfer. Yeah. Looks like an alien.
Yeah, it is a Silver Surfer. And but it's I have 3 cameras on it right now, which is weird. It's re-recording well. Yeah, I've never used my long form on my I never knew that there was time lapse on my cell phone until today.
I figured that out too. I took matter of fact, I took pictures of a surfer up at Marble Hill Beach in northern on the northern coast of Ireland here. And I had 3 pictures, and I accidentally pressed the thing on my phone that puts 3 pictures into like a GIF file, and it made a little video, and I sent it to a couple people. I didn't even know how I did it, but I did it. It was like an accident.
Well, and anyway, it's really, I mean, it's a great feature because I was just flipping out because all these artists do these speed paintings on Instagram, and so I took this other computer I have on my right side that's recording me, and I've been recording myself painting because on the laptop I can use a software and speed it up, but then the file size is too big and incongruous with what with what Instagram accepts. So anyway,
So you can make that file much smaller. And
I can't. The phone one I can, but I figured after I was done with this, I just do, like speed up the last 4 paintings that I've recorded and maybe do a YouTube intro with it or something else. But yeah, I really think that the creative aspects and the intellectual aspects that people there's so much talent in people, and there's actually probably a lot of drive that other people don't know that other people want to bring out and exfoliate from their dried up being and make something out of it, but they're not certain who to ask, or they don't know how to present it, and so people aren't able to pick up what they don't know. Not everybody is so easily able to share their general desires of, yeah, I'd like to do a book and make a movie, or I'd like to, do this and that, and meaning any sort of collaboration. For example, I still want to buy some property and get some commercial property and run a business in a commercial property, but I don't have any particular investors that I just happen to know. And anytime I Google it, it's already a pre-built investment company, and they want you to invest in their already going real estate investing company, which then means that if I did that, that's more like an investment than it is a idea that I'm able to purchase, own, and run a business and build business with people that are, let's say, local to me. Not that they would have to be. Like if you say, "Oh, I'd invest," then I'm trying to set up, I guess, a general contract for a company where anyone globally could invest and get a percentage of the business proceeds, just in order to have locations for what I wanted to do. Not to carry on, but I might as well say it. Maybe a listener will hear this and or think it's an interesting idea. But my idea was to build basically a coffee shop that would in the evenings transform into a kind of a coffee bar, but in the daytime it was strictly a coffee shop. And but then what it would be is you would have ongoing bands, or well, not ongoing, or bands, poetry, stand-up comedy, performance art, and it would all be being recorded, right? And so at the end, they could come in and perform, and then you'd record it and give them a copy of that digital recording, and maybe licensed or not licensed depending on who it is. You give them the option whether or not you would be able to display the recording, have rights to it, in other words, or not. And then but people would come in.
You could also sell like live performance tickets, or like live viewing to it.
Yeah. You like anyone that came in, there would kind of be like a $1 entrance fee or something like that, just to keep moment going. And then if
But I mean, for like online viewing.
For online viewing,
yeah.
Well, that would be interesting, to sell online viewing. I hadn't considered that as being the financial angle, because in one way I would say, look, we'll record your stuff if you pay us, $20. If you pay us $20, you get like a half hour of performance, and we'll record it, and we'll give you a copy of that recording, right? And maybe a lot of people would jump on that, and a lot of people might jump on it, especially if there was an audience coming in that was in the background. And anyway, but the whole idea was just something that was cool, and then I could change out visual artists on the side, just like coffee shops do. And I thought that would be my idea of a nice business to have. And then I met this guy on a bus, and he said, well, I think, if I was part of that kind of business, if it was a bigger building, I'd want to buy one of those motorcycle domes that they have in Vegas and put it on that floor where you get like people doing, rotating around inside of a sphere on a motorcycle, kind of daredevil acts and stuff. And I thought, okay, I'll keep you in mind. I got his number, but I also thought, I don't know, like local insurances and zoning for dangerous things would be a whole different thing, but I'm open to that idea. Anyway, that's just me spitballing what I would like, but I don't have the extra funds right now to go lease a building and get it off the ground. And so that's where people that wanted to invest in it, I would, try to put their money in escrow until the thing was ready to launch and contract with them. So they make certain they got their percentage of the profits based on what they were investing. That kind of thing. That's my long story. Okay. Oh yeah, man. It's maybe I should call this session a wrap.
All right.
So people don't feel like, oh, there's another 4-hour video by Das Pook I'm not going to watch.
All right, man. So, we got coming tonight anyway, or this evening, or this afternoon. You have people coming this afternoon too, right?
Oh. Well, what else? I mean, as far as Hythloday, I want to say that I became sad by it. I also started to think after the ordeal, and I was just kind of meditating to myself. It put me in the position of how would the world respond to my absence in light of that. I was thinking of other people that I know, if they committed suicide, what that would entail in my mind and in other people's minds, the effects of it. And so I'm definitely not happy about the decision that he made to do it. He, as a determinist, he would argue, people could argue that it was an impossibility for it to be any other way.
There were just some little anomalies in the video itself, and which kind of opened the door to me, or for me to interpret it as not just his sense of humor, but that he was still open to the fact that fiction is in some way beneficial or evocative of something other than strictly facts. And like when he signed off with "see you later," is it just ironic, or was he being playful? I don't know how to interpret that. He, after saying all of these things about there's nothing else, and that he's a strict determinist and he's a strict materialist, and then he signs off his last with a "see you later," and it just makes the ambiguity just that much more poignant. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, and I when I heard him say that, ironic, him saying "see you later" in just kind of a casual sense, but then more like, does he mean in the afterlife, or what was his implying? And then I just summed it up of don't overread into it. But I did find that, as you, a peculiar last sign off message. But
You know, it could just be one of those things too, where you say, "Oh my God," you know, but you don't mean "my God." You just it's a figure of speech people say, but whatever.
But I was going to mention something else. Yeah,
He was
it
very pleasant with me. That's I was always surprised that he would even watch my videos, frankly, because I'm not a scientist-minded person, really. I mean, it's not that I diss science, it's just that I'm not my videos are really rarely scientifically oriented. And
I kind of like your name kind of comes up as part of the old guard name that are still active. Like no one brought up Azrianok, right? And I don't think Hythloday mentioned him, but in terms of like
I don't think he
you
was around
and Piro, you're all three of you guys are, you're still ongoing, you're still doing videos, and he interacted with you guys specifically, or would be Scary and Piro. And so in one way, I figured, your name kind of tags along also with other people's names.
Yeah.
And yet
That's
it's interesting, it's interesting.
with the ephilism topic for him anyway.
Say again?
Especially with the ephilism and antinatalist topic from his perspective. Yeah.
Well, you are right that the antinatalism as a huge theme running through the groups, like with Gary out of the gate, heavily, it skewed what in lieu of Gary, in lieu of an antinatalist predominance and argumentation, what would have been the shape of the general philosophical arguments and claims people could and would have been making, and I guess have since been making. Meaning the antinatalist argument is a profound, interjection into the.
It is, but I've since discovered, since I started at university, it's very derivative. The Benatar asymmetrical sort of original position argument is very derivative of John Rawls and his distributive justice original position, or the behind the veil of ignorance thought experiment. It's very derivative of that. And I didn't realize that until I had political philosophy classes. But,
but was that your own discovery, or did somebody draw that connection?
No, well, I'm sure other people have made that connection before because it's fairly obvious, at least to me. But when when I was in Belfast, we did read a lot of John Rawls, and I was completely ignorant of
I'm ignorant of that.
Well, it's just the basic idea of like, what kind of a world would you want to be born into?
Right.
If you didn't know what your circumstances would be, if it was just a random crapshoot, what kind of a political economy would you want to design so that in John Rawls' perspective would be that you would want one where the worst of the worst is relatively not bad. And you would want to design a society where everybody gets food and shelter and social, goodness. You don't want a world where the possibility for being excluded from the basic necessities is a very high likelihood. And it really reminded me a lot of the Benatar argument that nobody would want to be born into this world. And part of the reason for that is because we have such a fucked up political economy where there's extreme, there maybe, some people argue against John Rawls and they say, well, some people would want to gamble with the possibility of being that top, 100th of a percent. or the top 1% of the world. But most people really would not. They would not want the prospect of being born into a world where about 60% of it is suffering, it's really bad suffering with genetic problems or just basic health problems or bad economic situations or shitty, weather, whatever.
I suppose I would be skipping a whole genre of thought to bring this up as a topic, but in terms of living in a more deprivated society but survivable, like living in Haiti, or even, God forbid, living in Yemen or something like that, where apparently, it's mass widespread famine, but to still be in a livable condition, meaning a survivable condition, what and what once again, I guess, the way to me, the idea of interpreting the world from a spiritual lens or a karmic lens or something to the effect where one suggests that everything that is happening to them is part of some grand martial plan, and then wondering of the world that one is in, wondering why they're exposed to the experiences that they are, and trying to use like a secondary or an ancillary or a tertiary form of reinterpreting their world such that the events have some sort of, I guess, an underscoring of meaning that could be reinterpreted metaphysically or karmically or spiritually. But anyway, that's like I said, if I bring up that topic that way.
Well, here's another angle. You bring up karma. Here's another angle on that same John Rawls' Behind the Veil of Ignorance original position thought experiment. Since from a materialist point of view, or from maybe a scientific point of view, karma or rebirth and reincarnation is not really demonstrable. So given that, all we can really say is that nobody deserves the situation that they're born into, right? Nobody deserves it. Whether you're really rich or mediocre or really poor, you don't deserve any of it. And from a religious perspective, if you believe in reincarnation, that's not the case. In a Hindu point of view, perhaps you are reborn into, like, there's an individual soul that's reborn specifically because of the way you were in a previous life. And I don't know if that's necessarily supposed to be taken literally or if that's metaphorical or not. I always thought of the use of the phrase previous life really has to do with one's previous instances of this life. Those are all of the causal influences that impact your current situation. And I always thought sorry?
Can you repeat that again?
I always wondered if reincarnation was meant to be literal from life to life, or if it was meant to sort of point out that you can't escape the previous actions of your current life. Everything that you are right now is a result of previous choices and behaviors. And also, the orientation of the perspective of reincarnation is such that you cannot escape the consequences of your actions when you die. You should live your life as if, like in a Nietzschean sense, that you cannot escape. You must live your life according to the idea that you cannot escape the consequences of your actions. Death does not escape the situation. And I think that it's a beneficial way to look at it, even though it's not necessarily true. It could be, I don't know, some kind of a Platonic fiction, I think, that is useful for thinking about how to live with your life. Does that make sense? Are you gone? You must be gone.